The morning sun had barely crept over the horizon when Aisha crouched in the corner of her mud-walled kitchen, her arms wrapped protectively around her ribs. The bruises from the night before had darkened overnight, blue blooming into purple, purple bleeding into black. She'd grown used to covering them with her shawl, but nothing could mask the heaviness pressing on her chest and the weight of her husband's rage. For years she had prayed for a son, not because she herself cared about sons more than daughters, but because the man she had married did. Imran's words echoed in her head like an old curse. A real man needs a son to carry his name. You failed me. Every time she gave birth to another daughter, his disappointment grew sharper, turning into fists, then into whips of words that cut deeper than any lash. Her three little girls, Amina, just 8, Sarah, 6, and baby Noor, huddled in the other room, trying not to make a sound. They had learned early that silence was survival. The oldest, Mina, had started to stand between her mother and father when he grew violent, trying to defend her, but Aisha had begged her to stay back. Hide, she would whisper. Be quiet, please. That morning, Aisha's hands trembled as she kneaded dough. The air in the small house felt thin, suffocating. She could hear Imran's heavy boots outside, pacing, kicking at the dirt like a restless bull. He was already muttering about needing an heir. Last night he'd spat at her feet after returning from the fields, muttering about another man in the next village whose wife had borne him 2 sons. Maybe it's not me that's cursed, Imran had hissed. Maybe it's you. Aisha had known what would come next, but she hadn't had the strength to fight. She rarely did anymore. Her daughters needed her alive. She kept her eyes down as he stormed back inside. His shirt smelled of sweat and old tobacco. He snatched the dough from her hands and threw it against the wall. Useless woman, he snarled. 3 mouths to feed, and not a son among them. Do you want me to starve? Aisha swallowed hard. I'm doing my best, she murmured. Your best? He raised his hand. Your best is worthless. The blow came quick, a backhand across her face that sent her staggering. She steadied herself on the rough wood of the table, tasting blood in her mouth. She did not cry out. She had learned long ago that it only pleased him. In the corner, Mina whimpered. Imran's head snapped toward her. You, he barked. Stop looking at me like that. Aisha moved fast, stepping between him and the children. They're just girls, she said softly. They don't understand. That's the problem, he spat. All of you are just girls. He stormed out then, slamming the door so hard the frame rattled. Aisha sagged against the table, her legs weak. For a moment, she let herself breathe. She knew he would be back after drinking at the tea shop. His anger heavier, his blows harder. Mina crept to her side, touching her mother's arm with tiny, trembling fingers. Mama, she whispered. Why is Baba so angry? Is it because of us? Aisha knelt, gathering her daughters close, feeling their thin bodies shake. Never think that, she said, though her own heart ached with doubt. Your blessings, your light. She kissed their foreheads. One by one, Nira's little fists clutched at her shawl. The baby's soft cheeks smelled of milk and dust. Aisha closed her eyes, swallowing a sob. She had nothing but these girls, and she would not let them grow believing they were less than any boy. But what could she do? Where could she go? Her father had died years ago. Her brothers refused to take her back, ashamed she'd borne no son. In this place, a woman without a man was as vulnerable as a sparrow in a storm. By dusk, Imran had not returned, but Aisha's stomach churned with dread. She had set out a small meal of lentils and rice, but none of them could eat much. The girls sat quietly, their eyes fixed on the door. That was when they heard it, the distant thunder of hooves, not the hurried clatter of village ponies, but the slow, deliberate gait of a larger horse. Aisha frowned. Strangers rarely came this way. Through the cracked window, she saw a tall man on horseback approaching from the western road. He was broad-shouldered, wearing a dust-stained coat and a wide-brimmed hat, his beard flecked with gray. His horse was a deep chestnut, its mane shimmering like copper in the fading light. He dismounted slowly, his movements unhurried but deliberate, as though he had all the time in the world. In his left hand he carried a saddlebag, and at his hip rested a worn revolver. Even from a distance, Aisha could tell, this was not a man from the village. The man knocked gently on the doorframe. His voice, when he spoke, was deep but soft. Evening, ma'am. Name's Caleb. Caleb, right. I'm passing through on my way west. My horse needs water, and I was hoping you might spare some." Aisha hesitated. Hospitality was custom, but so was caution. Still, something in his tone, a calm, respectful, uncoiled a small knot of fear in her chest. She opened the door a crack. "You may water your horse at the well," she said quietly. "It's just there." He tipped his hat. "Much obliged." She watched as he led the horse to the well, drawing water with strong, practiced hands. The girls peeked from behind her skirts, their eyes wide. Caleb noticed them and offered a small, gentle smile. "Hello there," he said. "You've got 3 fine daughters." Aisha flinched at the word. It was rare to hear anyone call them fine. Most called them burdens. She didn't answer. When he'd finished watering the horse, he came back to the doorway. "Ma'am, I don't mean to trouble you, but I couldn't help noticing a broken bar. You seem shaken." "Everything all right?" She stiffened. "We're fine," she said quickly. "My husband will be home soon." Caleb studied her bruised face, his jaw tightening. He didn't push. "I see." He reached into his saddlebag and pulled out a small cloth bundle. "I've got some bread and jerky from the trail for your girls, if you'll take it." Aisha blinked. No one had offered her help in years. Slowly, she reached out and took the bundle. "Thank you," she murmured. He nodded once, then turned to go. "Safe evening to you, ma'am." But as he mounted his horse, Imran's voice split the air like a whip. "What the hell is this?" Aisha's heart lurched. Imran was stomping up the path, his shirt half open, his eyes bloodshot. The smell of alcohol rolled off him in waves. He glared at Caleb, then at Aisha. "Who's this man?" he snarled. "What's he doing at my house?" Caleb sat straight in the saddle, calm but watchful. "Just watering my horse, friend." "No trouble." Imran spat on the ground. "You stay away from my property." Anyway, he turned on Aisha, grabbing her arm so hard she winced. "You're inviting strangers now? Is this what you do while I work?" Aisha shook her head desperately. "No, Imran. He only asked for water." His hand rose. The girls cried out. But before the blow could fall, Caleb's voice cut through the air, low and steady. "Sir," he said. "That's enough." Imran froze, blinking at the stranger. Caleb had dismounted and was standing now between him and Aisha, his presence like a wall. He didn't draw his gun. He didn't have to. The weight of him, the quiet authority in his voice, was its own weapon. "You've got 3 daughters," Caleb said softly. "They're watching you. Don't do this." For a moment, the only sound was the wind through the trees. Imran's face flushed with rage. "Stay out of this, cowboy," he hissed. Caleb's eyes didn't waver. "I've seen men like you before," he said. "Men who think a child's worth is in her gender. Men who raise their fists instead of their hearts. I'm telling you now, stop." Imran's hand trembled. For a heartbeat, Aisha thought he might strike Caleb, but the cowboy stood so steady, so unshaken, that Imran's bravado faltered. He cursed under his breath and stormed inside, slamming the door. Caleb turned to Aisha. His voice softened. "You don't have to live like this," he said. "Not you. Not them." Aisha stared at him, stunned, clutching her daughters close. She didn't know what to say. No one had ever stood between her and her husband before. No one had ever looked at her girls and seen anything but burdens. In this fading light, Caleb's face was shadowed, but his eyes were steady. "If you'll let me," he said quietly, "I'll see they're raised proud." Aisha stood frozen in the doorway, the baby heavy in her arms, her 2 older daughters clutching her skirt. Caleb's words hung in the air like a bell that refused to stop ringing. "If you'll let me, I'll see they're raised proud." She didn't know if she'd heard him right, or if exhaustion had turned her hearing to sand. She had spent so long living inside silence that her tongue felt thick, her throat dry. No one had ever offered her a way out. She opened her mouth but no words came. Inside the house, Imran was shouting again at no one, at everyone. She could hear the crash of a clay pot, then the dull thump of his boots pacing. Any second he would come back out. Caleb didn't move closer. He stayed where he was, a few steps away, his hands open at his sides. "You've got a choice tonight," he said quietly. "You can stay here, or you can come with me. I'm heading west. I've got a small spread near the Colorado border. Land enough for a garden, room enough for children to run." Aisha's heart hammered. She looked down at Mina and Sarah. Their eyes were wide, but not with fear. Something like hope flickered there, faint and trembling. "What if he follows?" she whispered. "What if he finds us?" Caleb's jaw tightened. "I know how to make sure he doesn't." He glanced toward the house. "But the first step is yours." Behind her, Imran roared her name. The girls jumped. That sounded low, drunk. Farrella snapped something inside her. She had been so careful, so patient, hoping time would soften him. It never had. He would never see her daughters as blessings. He would only see them as proof of failure. She shifted the baby higher on her hip and reached for Mina's hand. Her fingers trembled, but her voice, when she spoke, was steady. "Take Sarah," she told Mina. "Hold her tight." Caleb's eyes flicked to hers. He gave the single, slow nod. They moved quickly. Caleb led his horse to the back path behind the well. He swung his saddlebag over one shoulder, then offered his hand to Aisha. She hesitated only a second before taking it. His grip was warm, calloused, steady, the grip of a man used to catching people before they fell. The girls climbed onto the horse first, Mina holding Sarah, then Aisha mounted with the baby in her arms. Caleb swung up behind them. He clicked his tongue, and the horse began to move, its hooves muffled on the dirt road. As they rode away, Aisha didn't dare look back. She didn't breathe until the house was a dot behind them, swallowed by the night. They rode for hours under a silver moon, the wind smelling of sage and river water. The baby slept, soothed by the horse's slow rhythm. Every so often, Caleb asked softly, "You doing all right?" And Aisha would nod, unable to speak. Finally, just before dawn, they reached a small camp by a creek where Caleb had left supplies. He dismounted and helped the girls down, then spread a blanket near the fire pit. "Rest here," he said. "I'll get water." Aisha eased down, her arms aching from holding the baby. She watched as Caleb filled a tin cup at the creek, his movements sure and quiet. He wasn't a man who wasted words. That steadiness calmed her more than any promise could. When he returned, he crouched beside her. "Drink," he said, handing her the cup. She took it and drank greedily, water running down her chin. The girls nibbled at the bread he gave them, their eyes darting between him and their mother. "Mama," Sarah whispered, "is he going to take us away?" Aisha smoothed her daughter's hair. "He's taking us somewhere safe," she said. The words felt strange in her mouth, somewhere Safia, like a language she'd forgotten she knew. Caleb busied himself tending the fire. "I've got a wagon waiting in town," he said. "We'll ride there after sunup. No one will follow." She looked at him sharply. "How can you be sure?" He met her gaze. "I left a note at your door. Told him where you're going. Told him if he comes after you, he'll answer to me and the sheriff." She stared. "You risked that?" "I buried my wife 3 winters ago," he said softly. "Lost her and the baby both. Some things I can't change, but some things I can." He glanced at the girls. No man should raise a hand to child, or to their mother. Something inside Aisha cracked. She hadn't cried in years. It had been beaten out of her, but now tears slid down her cheeks, hot and unstoppable. She turned her face away, ashamed. Caleb didn't touch her. He just sat there, watching the fire, giving her the dignity of silence. Days turned into weeks on the road. They took the wagon west, crossing stretches of open land where the sky seemed to go on forever. The girls began to laugh again, at first little bursts like birds escaping a cage, then longer, freer sounds. They chased each other near the campfire, helped Caleb gather wood, and learned to ride in the wagon seat beside him. Aisha watched them, her heart swelling and aching at once. For the first time, they were testing childhood. Caleb never tried to press himself into their lives. He slept apart, gave them space. He taught the girls how to braid rope and whistle for a horse. He showed Aisha how to handle a rifle, not to fight but to feel the weight of her own strength. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the prairie gold, Mina tugged at Aisha's sleeve. "Mama," she whispered, "he's like a hero in a story." Aisha smiled faintly. "He's a good man," she said. Mina hesitated. "Will he be our Baba now?" The question lodged in Aisha's throat. She had no answer. She only knew this: her daughters were standing taller. They were no longer shrinking under someone's shadow. When at last they reached Caleb's spread, it was nothing grand, a low cabin of rough-hewn logs, a corral, a few acres of scrub grass. But to Aisha it looked like a kingdom. The air smelled of pine, the hills rolled like green shoulders. There was no one to glare at her daughters, no one to demand sons. Caleb helped them unload their things. "There's 2 bedrooms," he said. You and the girls can take the big one. I'll fix up the loft. Aisha looked at him. Why are you doing this? She asked quietly. He shrugged. Because I can. That night they ate stew by the fire. The girls curled up on a rug with the baby, giggling at the flicker of flames. Aisha sat across from Caleb, feeling warmth seep into her bones. For the first time in years, she wasn't bracing for the sound of boots, the slam of a door. She studied his face in the firelight, the lines carved deep from sun and grief, the eyes steady but kind. You said you lost your wife, she said softly. He nodded. Name was Clara. Sweetest woman I ever knew. She always said she wanted a house full of children. We only got halfway there. His voice broke a little. He cleared his throat. She'd have liked you. Aisha reached for her cup, fingers trembling. I don't know how to thank you, she whispered. You don't have to, he said. Just raise them proud. Seasons shifted. The girls learned to read and write from an old book Caleb's wife had left behind. They planted a small garden, coaxing green from the dry earth. Caleb built them a swing under the big oak. At night, Aisha told her daughters stories where girls were heroes, where no one's worth was measured in sons. Caleb would sit by the doorway, listening, a faint smile tugging at his mouth. One evening, as winter crept close and the sky burned orange, Aisha stood on the porch watching the girls chase each other across the yard. Caleb came up beside her, hands in his pockets. They're different now, he said. They're free now, she corrected. He nodded, looking out at them. So are you. She turned to him. The wind lifted her shawl, carrying away the last scent of the life she had fled. I am, she said softly. For a long moment they stood in silence. Then Caleb reached out, very slowly, and brushed a stray strand of hair from her face. His touch was tentative, asking. She didn't pull away. The girls' laughter floated up to them like music. The sun dipped lower, gilding the hills. Aisha felt a strange, steady peace settle over her heart, of the kind that comes not from being rescued, but from stepping into a life you chose. She had been beaten for birthing daughters. Now, under this wide western sky, she would raise them proud, and she would stand proud beside them,